It's our turn, episode number 73, 3-player games. In this episode, Annette and I talk about the games we've played recently, and we discuss our favorite 3-player games.
This is the Dice Tower Network, adding games to your wish list since 2005.
Hosting for this episode is generously provided by our fantastic supporters on Patreon.com. If you'd like to help us out by pledging $1 per month or more, please visit patreon.com/OurTurnPodcast. Every dollar helps us to keep this show going strong. Hi, and welcome back to Our Turn. I'm Cathy Ford.
And this is Annette, also known as Netter's Plays.
Hi, Annette. Welcome back.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to have you back on the show.
Yeah, it's been I think we skipped February, but I last talked to you in January.
I think so. Yeah. Well, today we're here to talk about what we've been playing lately, and we're also going to be talking about 3-player games. Okay. So I'm excited to do that. But let's start off like we normally do with what we've been playing lately. So what have you been up to?
Well, last weekend I had a gaming event. So I invited a bunch of my friends, and there were about 15 of us throughout the night.
Oh, you had this at your house?
Yeah.
Fun.
And even one of my friends said, "Oh, it's like a mini con."
Oh, nice.
So we had several tables set up, but one of the games that I did get to play there was this game called Castell. Now, I'm not sure if you've heard of it.
I have. I played this at HaitiCon in, I want to say 2016.
Yep.
And it was a prototype at the time, and it was the first game I ever play tested.
Oh, wow.
And I loved it, and I can't wait to get my hands on a copy.
Right? That's how I've been feeling since I've known Aaron Vanderbeek. He's the designer.
Uh-huh.
And he's been lugging it around for several years around the Bay Area, play testing it. And it was actually a really good play test game itself. It was really well done. And then finally, Renegade Game picked it up.
Oh,
and
nice.
And they made the game, and it is still amazing, and it's really pretty. Artwork is great. Yeah, but I had the chance of playing it. Aaron was here too, and he taught us.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this game, and it hits a lot of the things that I love about a lot of games, and that talks about a culture or a history. Mm-hmm. I love it when games illustrate history and cultures that are different from mine.
Right.
And Castell is definitely that. It takes place in Spain.
Yeah, it does. So it's a game where you are a Casteller. You're a Castelling group, I guess. A Castelling group or a Castell. And the sport itself is taking place in Catalonia, Spain, in different regions. And so it's a traditional sport where all these people form groups, and they pretty much climb on top of each other. They create these human towers, and they exhibit how strong and how tall and, how well put together their whole group is. And their group is represented in their regions.
And we're not just talking about acrobats climbing 2 or 3 people high.
No.
We're talking about people climbing 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 people high, and then 15 or 20 people at the bottom, reinforcing the bottom row of people in order to, give them the strength to hold up all these people on top of them.
Right.
It's acrobatics.
It takes the whole team, which is kind of the whole community to do it, because it's not just men doing it. It's also women and children too. Children are the light ones that get to climb all the way to the top.
Yeah. And you're literally climbing over other people. You're pulling up on people's legs and shoulders and arms and stuff and climbing up to the top of this tower of people. I know. It's amazing.
And I've never heard of this before until I played the game. And the funny thing is, you get so invested into the story and what this is, the sport. It's so intriguing and interesting that we haven't even talked about the game itself. But
I know it's a Spanish-specific festival.
Right. So it already calls to that attention where, you're kind of intrigued. Mm-hmm. And the gameplay in the box itself is really unique and different. And that's what I really like about it, because what you are is you're a team and you're going around these different festivals throughout this year. And so what you're doing is traveling from one region to another region, and you know what the calendar is bringing. You know what festivals are coming up in the future, next month or the following month after that. So what you do is you travel around this map and you recruit new performers or castellers to join you. And then they come and they join you. And then in the end, what you're doing is you're traveling, collecting these tiles that represent people, and then you're putting on a show at the end of this month or the round. And this show that you put on are these tiles where they're kind of placed like in a pyramid form. And so you try to place your hefty tiles, like the 10s and the 9s and the 8s on the bottom. And then you put lesser number ones, like the 1s and 2s and 3s on top of that. And so you're creating this pyramid, and you're showing off how well you can form your pyramid with the tiles that you've been collecting or the people you've been recruiting.
And it's not just a pyramid where you're, 5 people on the bottom and then 4 people on the next row and 3 people on the next row, etc. They do some pretty odd formations too. With people out, you may have 5 on the bottom, but you may have 8 or 10 on the top going out on the sides.
Yeah, well, I think on the new game itself, I think it took out some of the play testing of that.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. When I played it, it was at HateyCon, and it was totally a prototype. I was play testing it. So we were pushing things to the edge. Right. So I haven't played it since it got published, though. So tell me about it.
So what you're doing is recruiting people, forming these triangles or these formations. And also, while you're gaining experience, you're also gaining skills. So you increase your skill level, too. What you're trying to do is showcase your skill levels to perform better. The better you perform, the more points you get. And also, you want to go to different regions. So you want to showcase that you can perform in these different regions. And you also have diversity in your own group too, because you score points based on diversity, the different numbered value tiles that you have too. So there's a lot going in this game, but in the end, it's really fun. You really find yourself kind of like, oh, I really want to perform in the next month, but it's going to be pretty far if I perform this month. So maybe I'll skip out this month, so you have to make those hard decisions where you can't participate all the time. And it's really fun. I had a really fun time with this game when I played it. You should definitely, buy your own copy.
Oh, I plan to. I've seen a copy of it at my friendly local game store, Great Escape. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, budget constraints were like, I got to leave it on the shelf for right now, but it is on my list of purchasing here very soon.
Yeah, and it's from a designer in the Bay Area too, so.
Nice.
So yes, my rating for this game is a 5. It's a definite 5. I love it so much.
Buy it now.
Yeah, buy it now. I might be giving it a 5 because I know the designer, but still, regardless if I didn't know him, I think this game is still great.
It's always exciting when you know the designer,
right.
When you've met them and you're doing things together. Mm-hmm. You can know a designer and they could make a terrible game.
Right.
And it's important to, rate it appropriately. And if you had a great time with this, then a 5 is appropriate.
Yeah, and I think it's appropriate for people that are into strategy-based games. Like, it's a pretty heavier strategy-based game, but it's very interactive between players. So if you like that, you should definitely get this.
I played this game. I play tested it at HateyCon 2015. Mm-hmm. And I was only there for Friday night on that particular con. And I think I played 3 or 4 games that night. I only remember 2 of them. Mm-hmm. And one of them was Castell.
Yeah.
So that tells you something about the game.
Right. And that was play testing early year.
Exactly. That was play testing a few years ago. This is a good game, and it stuck with me, and I've been keeping an eye out for it. I would very much like to acquire this for my own library.
Definitely.
So I totally agree with your rating, and I haven't played it since it was in playtesting. So
Right.
I'll be interested to see how it's changed since playtesting.
All right. So what have you been playing?
Well, I went to Conquest Sac this last weekend, and I not only got in a play of Between Two Cities, I won a copy of the base game.
Oh, nice.
They had a play to win thing going on. It was so funny because they decided that since somebody was running a game of Between Two Cities, anybody that signed up for this game to play it would be eligible for the drawing.
Oh.
But the drawing was happening at the time that the game was supposed to be starting. So my friend Dwayne said, we'll put off starting, go to the drawing and see what happens, and then come back and play the game. And so I went to the vendor room, and the very first game that was put up for the drawing was Between Two Cities, and I won.
Yay.
I was like, I won this play to win game I've never played. So I was excited. They also had a copy of the expansion for play to win drawing. I didn't win that.
Okay.
Unfortunately, someone else won that. When we played the game, we played it with the expansion. So now I kind of need to get the expansion. So Between Two Cities is definitely a unique game in that it's similar to Seven Wonders in that you're building something in front of you, but it's not quite in front of you. It's like off to the side.
Yeah.
And then there's another one off to, your game, the one you picked was off to the left, and the one your neighbor picked is off to the right. And you're actually building both of these cities.
Okay. Between two cities.
Exactly. You are between two cities and you're building on both of them. And it's the lowest score of the two cities that counts. So you could have one city that is like the bomb and scores you, 85 or 90 points, but it's your other city that's going to count for your score.
Oh.
So it's your lowest played city that actually counts for your score. So you don't want to neglect either city. You want to make both cities the best possible city you could possibly do, but you're building it with your neighbors on either side. It's a drafting game in that you get dealt a certain number of tiles, and I'm blanking right now on how many tiles you get dealt, but you pick 2, and it's neat because these tiles show on them what they want to be next to and what they don't want to be next to, which is really helpful. So, for example, houses really, really, really don't want to be next to factories.
Yeah.
They want to be next to parks, and they want to be next to commercial, and they want to be next to restaurants and bars, but they really don't want to be next to factories. Municipal buildings like libraries and hospitals and fire department and museums all have things they want to be next to. Some of them don't want to be next to each other. So, for example, you don't want to put a hospital next to a museum.
Yeah.
Hospital next to a fire department, not so bad. But for example, houses may not mind being near fire departments, but they really don't want to be near hospitals. And I've actually had experience with this because I worked for a local healthcare company that had a hospital that a neighborhood was built up around it. It actually built this hospital in like I want to say the 1920s or 30s.
Yeah.
And it was constantly dealing with complaints from the neighbors about the noise and things like that,
Right.
even though the hospital was there first.
Yeah. That's the thing with hospitals. They're not quiet.
Yeah. So anyway, needless to say, that hospital no longer exists. They built another one in a commercial district and replaced it. But getting back to the game, you're drafting these tiles. You draft one for each city, one on your right, one on your left, and you're working with your partners on either side of you. So you can talk to your partner on your left and say, okay, I have these tiles and I'm going to pick this one. I mean, you don't tell them exactly what's in your hand, but you say, I'm going to pick this one and I'm planning to put it here. What have you got? And you can coordinate. He or she can say, okay, I'm going to work on this over here. We were playing with an expansion, so we could build a 5x5 grid. I think in the base game, it's a 4x4 grid, which either way is fine. And then when the game is over, you go through and you score the cities based on what's next to what. If you've got houses next to factories, that's negative points. If you've got several commercial tiles in a straight line, that's extra points. If you have bars next to business buildings, so like business parks and stuff like that, financial buildings, that gets you extra points.
Yeah.
And there's a whole bunch of combinations like that. This game, I've heard of it for a couple of years, and I knew Dwayne had a copy of it, my friend Dwayne, but I just had never had a chance to play it before. And I really enjoyed this game. I mean, it hits the same type of thing inside like Seven Wonders does.
Right.
You know, when you sit down and you're playing Seven Wonders, you're building a wonder. Or if you're playing with Dwayne, you're building 2 or 3 wonders because he tweaks it and does variants and stuff. But this game just hits all those same notes, but it's different.
Yeah.
It's not the same as playing Seven Wonders. I am actually planning on having both in my collection. I already own copies of Seven Wonders, and I own all of the expansions for Seven Wonders except Babel. I did not like the Babel expansion.
Okay.
But I think they're coming out with a new expansion, and I'm drawing a blank on what it is right now. But it sounds more intriguing than Babel ever did, so I'll probably get that. But I really liked Between Two Cities, and I am already plotting and scheming how to get a hold of the expansion for it because I really liked playing with that expansion as well.
How many players did you play this game with?
We actually played it twice, and the first one was with 4 players. The second one was with 4 players as well, but the 4th player swapped out. One guy had to leave and another person came in. The only person at the table that had played it was the GM, my friend Dwayne, and he explained it really quickly. It was really easy to learn. It was really easy to play. It played in about 30 or 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And we went, that was cool. Let's do it again. And we set it right up again and played it again. And it played again in 30 or 40 minutes. And it just, you do a round of drafting in one direction. And then I think this was an expansion component. I don't recall. There are some larger tiles that are actually the size of 2 tiles. And you go through and you draft those and you place them. And then you go the other direction and you draft tiles again, and then the game is over and you do scoring.
That's quick.
Yeah, this was published by Stonemaier Games. The designers are Matthew O'Malley, Morton Monrad, and Peterson and Ben Rossett. Beth Sobel did the art, so you know it's gorgeous.
Right.
It came out in 2015, and I think the expansion came out, I want to say last year in 2017. I totally give this game a 5. I don't often give 5s, and I'm not just saying that because I want a copy. I was like, oh, great, this game I've never played before. I just want a copy of. Fantastic.
Right. Those are hit and misses.
Exactly. But I was a little more optimistic about it because it was a Stonemaier game. I like Stonemaier games. I was really hoping to win Viticulture because that was also included in the Play to Win thing, and I had played it. That is still a game that I still want to add to my collection, but I didn't win that one. After playing this, I was really glad I had won a copy of this, and I can't wait to show Mark. And apparently, this is one of those games that you need 3 players to play normally, but because it's a Stonemaier game, and Stonemaier likes to be thorough, they have included a 2-player variant and a solo variant.
Oh, wow. He always has solo variants in his games.
Yeah. And I haven't played either the 2-player variant or the solo variant yet, but I plan to. Apparently the 2-player variant that's included with the game.
Yeah.
I watched Rado's review of Between Two Cities, and he said, the 2-player variant that's included with the game, it's all right. You're building 2 cities, your opponent's building 2 cities. But apparently, once he originally posted his thoughts on the game, somebody from Stonemaier came back and said, did you know we have this other 2-player variant? Why don't you give this a try? And he goes, that's the variant you want to do.
Right.
You have a city and your opponent has a city, and then there's an autumnal city. And you take turns doing things to the autumnal city. But then it scores against you, so it could beat you. I can't wait to play both the 2-player variant that comes in the box and the Autumna variant. I give this game a 5. So that's Between Two Cities. If you have a chance to play it, definitely do. If you like Seven Wonders, play this game. I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, I still need to play it. I haven't played it yet.
Oh, you haven't played this one?
No. I was playing another game, and Mitch, he had the chance of playing it. And because he was waiting on me, and my friend was like, oh, let's just play this in between. And they were done quickly, like you said. It was like 30 minutes, and ever done. And then he told me afterwards, he's also like, yeah, you definitely should try this one out. I think you'd like it.
Definitely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. If you like Seven Wonders, I think you like Between Two Cities. All right, what's next on your list?
Well, a game that I also played this past weekend was Azul.
Oh, I've been wanting to play that one. I haven't had a chance yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you know what? Ever since I got it back in December, I've played it so many times. It's a really popular game that you can play it as a 2-player game, and it's very mean. And a 3 and 4-player, it works just as fine too. But this game is by Michael Kiesling, and it's a Plan B Games too. The component quality in this game is really great. Like, the artwork is pretty to look at, but those tiles that are in the box, those tiles are something else because they're like made out of a resin kind of material.
I've heard the component quality of Azul is outstanding.
Right.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a tile laying game about tile laying.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it is an abstract game, so I guess it fits with that abstraction of an abstraction. But
that's cool.
Yeah. So what you're doing is you're basically have supposedly these factories, these locations where you have tiles drawn out of a bag randomly, and 4 tiles are placed in a factory. And depending on the number of players, you have a various number of factories out in front of the players. And then what you do is on your turn, you get to pick from any one of those factories. You can either pick the color red, say example, tiles in this one factory. Well, if there's 2 of them, you pick both of them. And whatever you didn't get, like the blue or black ones, well, you dump them into the center. So what you're doing is you're kind of picking all these tiles out of these factories. Eventually, they're going to be empty. And another thing, too, is that when you're drawing tiles, not only can you pick from a factory, but you can also pick from the center, where all the other tiles are being dumped into.
So the center's kind of like the Home Depot where you go and pick up your stuff from the store.
Yeah, it's like the clearance sale.
Okay.
So you go into the middle and you can pick and choose. Well, you could see where everyone's dumping all these extra tiles. And what you're doing is you're ending up with a wide selection of certain tiles in the middle. It's very intriguing. And eventually someone will give in and take it. Well, when they take those tiles, they also take the first player marker to go first the next round, but that first player marker is going to score you a negative point. So you kind of have to weigh your choices, whether it's a good choice or not. And then what you do after you pick your tiles, you place them on your wall. And so you have to put them in a row. And so the bottom row, you can fit 5 tiles, then 4 above that, and 3 above that, and 2 and 1. And so if you complete a full row of, say, one color, then that row is complete, and then you push over a tile onto your wall. And so what you're doing is you're trying to fill up your whole wall and score the most amount of points. And if you complete, say, horizontal rows or vertical columns, or even all the colors of one type on your wall, well, you get special bonus points at the end of the game too. So you're trying to pick and choose which tiles to take to place. And the taking part is the really interesting part because everyone is keeping their eyes on which ones they want. So sometimes in the game when I'm playing, I look at other people and see what they want. And I kind of go in that direction because I know what they're doing. And so
now, is this a game where somebody draws a tile and you're like, oh, you rat?
Right.
You took what I wanted.
Exactly, because it's an open board. So you can see what they're going for. You can kind of see what they're tempted towards. And then that, you kind of want to go in there to either block them from doing something or you just forget about it and just do your own thing. So it gives you that temptation to block people or not. And so there's a lot of player interaction. I mean, by the end of the game, everyone's just having a really fun time. People are cursing you and people are laughing about it. So it's a really fun game, and it's a game that you can easily teach. I mean, I just taught the game right now, and you can also easily play too. So I think it's a game that takes a short amount of time, I've introduced it to my aunt who doesn't play board games at all, and she loved it. She loved it so much. Oh, this is
a good one for non-gamers.
Right. She loved it so much that at the end of the game, she was like, let's play it again.
Oh, I love when that happens. I've been looking for games to take and teach my grandma.
Yeah.
She's played Quirkle, and she's played Suro, and she's played Flux.
Mm-hmm.
Flux, she kept going, this is a stupid game, and then she'd win. So, yeah, I'm always looking for games that are great for teaching non-gamers. Okay, now I got to get a copy of this.
Right. And that's why I gave this one a 5. A 5 rating. Excellent. It's a must-buy because it's a game that it just belongs in your collection because it's easy to explain. Anyone can play it. If you're heavy into the strategy, well, definitely you can easily get into that.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. All right. My next game, I also played at Conquest Sac. My friend Richard Bright, hi Richard, was running a pair of Felds. The 2 games that he was running were Castles of Burgundy, which I will talk about on another episode. And the other one was Bora Bora. And when we were done, we decided that Bora Bora is the most Feld of all the Feld games.
Right.
You agree with that?
Yeah, I think it's one of his meaner Feld games too. I don't know if you're going to touch on that.
It was.
Okay.
It was kind of mean. So Bora Bora is a worker placement game. It's kind of a point salad game, which is fine. I'm not saying that as criticism. Bora Bora is an island, I believe, in the South Pacific, I want to say.
Yeah.
And you're using dice to perform a variety of actions. So at the beginning of every round, you roll 3 dice, and then you get to place your dice to take different actions. The higher the die, generally, the better you're going to profit from it. So if you roll a 6, you put it out a 6, you're going to get a great result. But you don't want, for example, all 6s because you're only placing 1 die at a time, and then everybody else goes around the table, and then it comes back to you and you get to place another one. The thing is when you're placing a die, if you're placing a die on an area of the board that somebody else has already placed a die, mm-hmm. you have to place a lower die than what is there. So if someone placed a 6 and a 4, you need to place something lower than a 4.
Right.
In order to be able to benefit from that particular section. So that was different. I hadn't seen that mechanism before. You're trying to gauge which actions you need to do. There's a whole variety. I mean, there's a bunch of different actions that you can take. There are tasks that are done by a woman character. There are tasks that are done by a man character. There's jewelry you can buy, mm-hmm. and those get you a certain number of points. And there's just all kinds of things to do. There's so much to do in this game. Right. I mean, it's a typical Feld game, but you also want to make sure that you're not letting your opponents do other things. So maybe your opponent is trying to go after 2 identical pieces of jewelry because that will score them for one of their goals. So maybe you want to take that piece of jewelry so they can't get it because there's only 2 available. Right. This was a mean game. I think I came in dead last, which is not unusual, but I really enjoyed it. I would give this game a 4.5 on the OTP mm-hmm. scale. I think I would give it a 4.5 just because I need to explore it some more before I can give it a full solid 5. So, Richard, if you're listening, bring this game to the next game day, and I want to play this again. I also enjoyed playing Castles of Burgundy. I'm not going to go into Castles of Burgundy a whole lot. I have played it a few times before, and I had forgotten how much I enjoy Castles of Burgundy. I thought it was really different for somebody to say, hey, come sign up for my game, and we're actually going to play 2 games, which I thought that was mm-hmm. really clever. So we took about 4 hours to play the 2 games, but it was also a neat experience diving into this one designer.
Have you played many of his games besides
I
these
have,
2?
but I played them like one at a time, and I've played Castles of Burgundy a couple of times, but not in a row. I played it, and then several months later I've played it, and then maybe a year later I've played it, and then I haven't played it in a couple of years because nobody's put it on the table and I don't own it. I've never played Bora Bora before this. Mm-hmm. Now, Richard pointed out to me that on my 52 game challenge, this counts as a game with alliteration in the title because Bora Bora, they both start with B. I
Okay.
had been planning to use Professor Pugnacious for that because it's got like 10 words in the title and they all start with P. I really enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed Bora Bora. It was a lot of fun. There's a lot to learn, a lot to do. This is not a game you're going to master on your first try or your second try.
Right.
This is a game that you need to play a few times, and I am definitely looking forward to playing this one again. That is Bora Bora from Stefan Feld.
Yep, he's one of my favorite designers. So I had a Feld Fest one year where I invited a bunch of friends and I said, we're not playing anything but Feld games. And I set out all of my Feld games out on a table and I said, you pick one and I'll show you how to play it. And everyone did. Like, they all were like, okay, let's do this thing.
Nice.
I had Bora Bora there and I remember showing that game off, and they didn't want to be too mean too early in the day because, I think this is one of his meaner games where, like you said, if you see someone kind of doubling up on something, you want to block them, but then again, that's going to take a die value out of your turn.
Exactly.
To do that. And so you have to weigh the options, like, should I or shouldn't I?
Do I need to concentrate on my goals or do I need to concentrate on blocking his or her goals?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good game.
It is. And I'm really looking forward to playing this one again. So anyway, what's next on yours? On your list?
Yeah, so again, on my evening last week, I played The Grim Forest. And this is a new game that just came out by Tim Eisner, and it's a Druid City Games, and it's a game that is 2 to 4 players, and it's about the Grimm stories. And so it has all the characters from all the classic fairy tales in this one game. And I don't know if you've seen the game itself, but...
I haven't.
Okay.
I haven't, but I am a big fan of the TV show Grimm. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen it yet. I think you mentioned it last time too, and I still haven't watched it.
Yeah. So, when I heard about this one, I was really intrigued and I would like to check it out. So go ahead, tell us about it.
So the Kickstarter itself, the main reason that I backed it was because of the Grimm stories, and also I saw the component quality that the Druid City Games was putting out. So it comes with a whole bunch of different miniatures in it. The insert is incredible because it has its own insert, and each insert location has like a cover for it, so they're not falling all over the place.
Oh, nice.
And
that is one of my biggest pet peeves is when game publishers design an insert for shipping the game, but not storing the game. So once you've punched it, then the insert's useless.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it when game designers and publishers do that. Go ahead, continue.
Yeah, so that's a great quality for the game itself. So that's why I wanted to back it. And I went ahead and introduced my gamer friends, and they play higher strategy games. So I was kind of like, at the end of the night, they were like, oh, let's play one more game. And I was like, okay, we're going to play this. And so I said, let's lighten the mood up. Let's play something kind of silly. And it's a classic, like, fairy tale kind of story. And these guys were like, I don't know. And I was like, well, I've been playing your games all day, so let's play it.
There you go. Guilt them into it.
Right. And I did. And they did play with me.
And did they enjoy it?
Yeah. Actually, one of them did not enjoy the game. But he's more of like a strategy heavy gamer. But my other friend too, he played it and he enjoyed it and he liked it. So the game itself is you have the 3 little pigs. Well, it's not their 3 little pigs. It's like their niece and nephews. And what they're trying to do is build these houses for the Grimm city. And so they go ahead and they build the houses out of clay or brick and, hay and they go ahead and collect these resources from these different locations in the forest. What you do is you have these cards and everyone has the same cards as you, and you're going to selectively pick one secretly, and you're going to go ahead and kind of show where you're going and what you're getting. Everyone does this at the same time, and so it's simultaneous selection. And then everyone, if you go to one location and you're the only person there, you get all the resources on that location. If you're there with someone else, then you have to split it equally and round it down. And so you have to kind of pick and choose like, oh, I think he's going to go here, so maybe I should go somewhere else, or I think he's going to go there. Definitely I'm going there. And so you're picking and choosing. And then on top of that, you also play these fable cards that you collect throughout the game. And these fable cards are like these friends, pretty much. These characters, they can be bad characters, like the wolf can come up and the wolf can kind of scare away someone from that location, and they can eat up all the resources or something. So the cool thing is that it has a lot of take that in the game, but because of take that games that I don't necessarily enjoy is the fact that you pick and choose who you want to take from. In this game, you're simultaneously selecting, where you're going. And if someone happens to be there, well, you're going to play the card on them. So it's not like you're picking on someone. It's like, they chose to go there with you.
They took the risk.
Exactly. You don't feel so bad in this game about to take that.
Nice.
Yeah. And so I kind of enjoyed the game, but basically I think it's more of a family weight game. It's more for, I think, geared towards families, and also not high intense strategy. It's a really loose, casual type of game.
Okay.
So for my rating, I give it a 3. Like, it's a solid game, but I'm not sure if it's a game I would suggest to everyone to play.
So would this be a game that you would introduce to a group of non-gamers?
Yeah, definitely, because all the characters are all familiar. Everyone knows who Snow White is. And everyone knows like who the big bad wolf is and Little Red Riding Hood. So
nice.
Yeah. So it's something that you can call attention to someone that doesn't play these games often.
Nice. Mm-hmm. I'm always looking for games that are great to play with non-gamers because my family aren't gamers, but they enjoy playing games. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. That's like my family.
Yeah. Every time I go to a family gathering, I take a few games. And if we get to them, great. And if we don't, that's okay too. It's not always appropriate to say, hey, let's play a game and, put something out on the table. But sometimes it is. I'm always looking for games to play, especially with my grandmother. My grandmother just turned 98 this year.
Wow.
And I love going down and visiting her and saying, Grandma, let's play this game. And she goes, oh, I'm too old to learn anything new. And then she beats me at this game I'm teaching her. I'm like, yeah, right, Grandma, sure, you're too old to learn. Yeah, I'm always looking for games like this because she ends up having a great time. And I love it when they say, where do you find all these games?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. All right. So that's Grim Forest.
Yes.
All right. So good for non-gamers, but not necessarily the type of thing that you would pull up for a bunch of heavy strategy gamers.
True.
Again, at Conquest Sac, my husband's favorite game of all time, if he had to make the top 100 games on his list, this would be his number one, and it's Power Grid. Mm-hmm. I don't know what it is about this game. He loves this game. It is lousy to play with 2 players, unfortunately, or we would probably play it a lot more often. We have the robot expansion for it, and he's not real impressed with it. At Conquest Sac, he said, I just want to play regular Power Grid. Our friend Dwayne, bless his soul, he's one of those people, I've talked about him before. He goes and haunts Board Game Geek for all the games that he likes, and he finds the fan variants, and he prints out the cards for the fan variants and the boards for the fan variants and all of that. And they're fun to play. I don't begrudge that at all. Mark asked him to put together one fan variant in particular, and he did, and we have that. But Mark said, I just want to play regular Power Grid. And I said, okay, I'll bring it to the con. What maps do you want? We picked out a few. We took them. And it turns out we had fan of the show, Kevin. Hi, Kevin. Stop by, and he goes, are you Cathy from Our Turn? And I said, yes, I am. Which was just like, somebody knows me. Oh my gosh. Imposter syndrome taking over completely. He asked if he could sit down and play with us. He'd never played Power Grid before. So we sat down, we played it, and I played it with Dwayne and Mark, and we had someone else in there, and I'm drawing a blank on who it is, and I'm so sorry. Anyway, we sat down and played, and we decided that we didn't want to do one of the unusual boards because Kevin had never played before. So we felt, let's pick a basic board. that has, the regular Power Grid rules, and we'll play that to teach him. And then next time we'll toss him into the deep end of the pool. Have you ever played any of the other boards for Power Grid?
No, I've only played the base Power Grid game once.
Oh, okay.
And it was when I was barely getting into the hobby.
There are boards for every part of the world.
Yeah.
When you're playing in India, that's got some screwy rules about resources. When you're playing there's a board called Benelux. It is Luxembourg and the Netherlands and Belgium. That makes it Benelux. In some countries, nuclear power is not allowed. So if you have, 2 houses in this country that doesn't allow nuclear power, you have to have a non-nuclear factory that can power those 2 houses. If you have a nuclear, they're not powering those 2 houses.
Right.
Oh, and the Korea board, the China-Korea board, has 2 markets for resources. So if you're in South Korea, you're buying from one market, and if you're in North Korea, you're buying at a different market, and they refresh at different rates. So let me back up. We were playing on the Quebec board. So that's just the province of Quebec up in Canada. And there are no special rules for it. There's no special big difference in the refresh rates of resources. Your resources are coal, garbage, nuclear, and oil. And they all have these standard refresh rates that you're coming back at. And then you also have the ecological resources like wind power, solar power, water power, that don't require resources. You just have to build the power plants that provide that power. And so this was just your basic game of Power Grid. You're building into different cities and you're building power plants, you're supplying power, you're buying resources for those. It was just really nice to just sit down. We had one newbie at the table. Everybody else knew how to play the game. It was very easy to explain this game to the new person and kind of bring them along. At one point, I was thinking, I'm going to do this. And then, it was Amy, my friend Amy. That was the other person we were playing with. I thought I was sitting there thinking, I'm going to go do this. And hopefully nobody before me will think to do that themselves. And our newbie Kevin was ahead of me. And my friend Amy goes, if I were you, I would do this, this, and this. And I'm like, Amy. And she was like, I was like, Amy, he wouldn't have done that. And I would have been able to do it myself. And now he's doing it. And when it got to my turn, I went, I was going to do that, but now I can't. Yeah, and she just kind of grinned at me and smiled and went, sorry. Kind of a sorry, not sorry kind of sorry. Right. But that's just the fun of these games. Right. You don't hold a grudge when something like that happens. You're like, she was just being a good teacher. Doggone her. And Kevin actually did pretty well. I think I came in behind him, but I did not come in last. I think Amy ended up coming in last in that one, which I thought was kind of poetic justice as far as from my point of view. Power Grid is a great game. I give it a solid 5. Yeah. Building power stations and connecting cities doesn't sound like a whole lot of fun. This is a Friedemann and Friese game. This is the one Friedemann Friese game that I will always give a 5 to. Because we loved Power Grid so much, we dove into giving 504 a try, and we went, ugh.
Yeah. I haven't heard much else about that game.
Yeah, we tried it and just the rules were not written well and all of that. But with Power Grid, the rules are written really well. Each map is very different. We have all of the maps. Yeah. I really wish, if Broken Token is listening, Power Grid desperately needs a box of its own. Not only to organize the components, but to haul the maps around. So would you please get on that? Thank you very much. I will send you money. So Power Grid is a great game. It's published by Rio Grande. It's a Friedemann Friese game. It came out in 2004. It's still in print. Yeah. And from what I understand, they're about to publish a 3rd box. So the history of this game is it came out in a box that fit the maps. When they're folded up, the map boards. And then about 5 expansions later, they released a new expansion map. And all they're doing is releasing new maps with new rules. But they released one map and they released it in a box the same size as the base box. And we're like, There's more maps coming.
Oh, no.
So you literally have to band these boxes together, and you put maps in one box and components in the other box.
Yeah.
Well, they're about to release a new expansion with a new box.
Yeah.
Which tells you they're coming out with more maps.
Yeah. That's like Concordia.
Yeah. I don't think they've done much in Africa or South America yet. They've done a lot in Europe. They've done America and Canada. I don't think they've done Central and South America much. I don't think they've done Africa much. They've done some in Asia. I know there's a Russia map, there's a China map, there's North and South Korea, there's India and Australia, but I don't think they've done much in the Middle East, which doesn't make much sense.
Right.
And I don't think they've done much in Africa or South America or Central America. So there's a lot more room, and I have a feeling we're going to be getting another new box for Power Grid. So again, Broken Token or Meeple Realty or any of you folks that make game storage solutions, Power Grid needs to be on your list, please.
Yeah.
Pretty please. Pretty.
I have to play it again.
Mark likes it so much, we upgraded our houses and resources from Meeple Source. Mm-hmm. And it kind of makes the game a little more fun. There's also a thing that you can get for the basic resources. It's kind of like an overlay where you put it over the resource area, the resource market on the map, and then it holds the resources in place. So if the table gets bumped, things don't go flying. But we upgraded our resources, so I don't think that overlay works for us now because they're different shapes now.
Yeah.
But yes, I highly recommend, if you have not ever played Power Grid, or if you haven't played it in a really long time, find somebody that owns a copy and sit down and play it, because this is a classic game, and that everybody should own.
Yeah, I have it, but I just haven't played it, so I need to get
it. Unfortunately, it is not a great 2-player game.
No, that's why I think it's still like in the shelf, and it hasn't been pulled off the shelf in a while because of that.
I mean, our Power Grid copy has a lot of wear and tear on it, and we still don't play it as much as we would like to, because it is not a great 2-player game. It does have a robots expansion that gives you basically a, quote, third player if you're trying to play it 2-player. It's about on par with the 7 Wonders 2-player variant.
Which is not good.
Which is not that great. It's not bad. I mean, if you've really got a jonesing to play 7 Wonders, yeah, you can if you've only got 2 people. Mm-hmm. It's okay. 7 Wonders Duel is better.
Yeah.
For scratching that itch. But Power Grid is really a game that needs 3 or more players, which we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just makes the game that much more enjoyable. So that's Power Grid.
Yeah, they need a 2-player only Power Grid game. Just like they have
absolutely
Cave versus Cave and Duel, 7 Wonders Duel.
7 Wonders Duel. Yeah, absolutely. I would love that. Freedom and Freeze, get on that. Thank you.
Yep.
Solid 2-player game for Power Grid. Thank you. You have your assignment. Go. So anyway, that's what we've been playing. We have set up and been referring to and rating games by our own rating scale. Here's how we are using this scale. 5. Buy this now. 4. A good solid game. 3. Decent with some bugs. 2. Has great potential as kindling. And 1. Give me back the time I spent playing it. So our hot topic for today is 3-player games. And by 3-player games, I mean games that you need a minimum of 3 players in order to play. Mm-hmm. We talked about Power Grid earlier. That's a game that requires 3 players to start with. Like I said, they do have a 2-player variant that's not that great. 7 Wonders is another game that requires 3 players to start. They do have a 2-player variant. It's not that great. 7 Wonders Duel is better. The intent of this particular segment is to talk about why certain games are good, but require 3 players to start. I don't know about you, Annette. I know you, like me, don't have any kids of your own.
Right.
And your bird doesn't play games.
Nope.
My dogs don't play games. So it's really hard when it's you and your partner and you pull a new game out and it says on the side of the box, 3+ players. Right. And you're like, why didn't I see this in the store?
Right. And the other thing, too, is some of the games that I selected do play 2 players, but they're best with 3 players, where sometimes you do get to play them at 2 players, and you're like, it'd be really great to just play it with more players. And their sweet spot is at 3 players. So that's where I went with my selection for 3-player games.
Okay. What are some games that you think are great games to play 3-player?
This one game, which isn't well known, at least I haven't heard many people talk about it, is called Eggs of Ostrich.
I have never heard of this one.
I actually made a video on it because there's no real videos of it, so I made one. It's called Eggs of Ostrich, and it's a 3-player only game. So you need 3 players to play this. No more, no less, exactly 3 players.
Now, it looks like that's not English on the cover.
No, it's not. I don't.
What language is that?
I have no idea.
She's just for the podcast audience, she's holding it up to a webcam and showing me the box. And I'm looking at it going, is that Hebrew?
No.
Is that Arabic?
I think it might be Japanese, or I think it's a Hapon brand. So it might be Japanese, but I'm not sure. I don't know what it is. It's an Asian
Where do you
game.
find some of these games? You talk about some of the most unusual games sometimes.
Yeah, I like those.
That's neat. I think it's great that you get these games from other markets other than what's offered just generically here in the United States. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, so it's by game designer Shenpei Sato. It's a Hapon brand, and it's back in 2012. But actually,
so that's Japanese market.
Right. And I got this game off of BGG Geek Store.
Oh, nice.
And they haven't had it back since it sold out. So I don't know if they'll bring it back or not, but I was lucky enough to just pick it up because I was introduced to this game by Maggiebot.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of her.
Yes.
Yeah, but I went to go visit her one time in Seattle.
Oh, nice.
And she introduced this game to me, and I fell in love with it. Like, we had such a great time with this, so I picked up a copy for myself.
You know, I forget sometimes that BGG has its own store where you can go and buy these unusual games. I need to go check out that store more and pick up some things from there.
Yeah, so the cool thing with this game is that it's a 3-player only game, and it's based off of simultaneous selection. So what you're doing is you're one of 3 brothers, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to go off into the Sahara, pretty much, where there's ostriches, and you're trying to collect ostrich eggs, but you put them in your basket. And certain baskets hold certain amounts of eggs, and you're trying to make sure you don't hold too many in certain baskets, otherwise they break and you get nothing.
Like they do.
Right. So, so it's this game where you look out into the field, you draw a card from the deck, and all of a sudden you see some ostrich eggs. On these cards, I'm going to show you, Cathy, so we'll see your reaction. So on these cards, you can see you have these ostriches, and they tell you how many ostrich eggs will come out. Either 7.
She's showing me a picture of an ostrich with the number 7. Here's, this is an ostrich in a weird position with the number 10.
Right. It's a very quirky game, and they're really showcasing their eggs. And
okay.
So,
and it's a cartoony art style.
Right. It's pretty fun and silly.
Uh-huh.
But what you do is you have these cards in hand. You showcase how many eggs are out in the field. And everyone has the same cards in hand, and you're going to play one card. It could be a basket of 2, 3, 5, or 7 that it holds, that number of eggs. Or a skip card. Because when you play the game, you're going to say, those eggs are going to go into my 5 basket. And if all 3 of you go and get those 10 eggs, well, it's split equally. So then each person will get 3 eggs and put it in your 5 basket. However, if one of you skips, and if you select the 3 basket, then your basket breaks.
Uh-oh.
Because you're getting 5 of them instead of 3.
So one player skips gathering eggs.
Right.
Which means that the 10 eggs divide between the two people.
Right.
And that means 5. And if you have a 3 basket, you've got too many eggs in your basket and your eggs break.
Right.
Ah, okay.
And that's pretty much how it plays. Like, it's a fairly simple game. It's really fun and thematic. And it's only for 3 players, but you can kind of like second guess each other. You're really playing like the whole deck pretty much. I think you take out like 1 or 2 cards from the deck. But yeah, you're playing with this game and people are just kind of trying to outwit one another.
If you've got 4 people sitting at your game or at your table, this is not a game you're going to pull out because that's too many. There's no 4-player variant.
No, you're pretty much waiting for your 4th player to come. And so you play this 3-player quick game. It plays in like 10 minutes. It's done. But that's why I selected this one, because it's a good filler game for 3 players. And it's perfect for those moments when you're waiting for the other.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, the first game that came to mind for me when I was thinking about 3-player games is Star Trek Ascendancy, the base game. Mm. Now, Star Trek Ascendancy, when you just pick up this box, and it's $100 game. I mean, this is not an inexpensive game. It is perfect if you're looking for a Star Trek game. I mean, if you're looking for a good IP Star Trek game, this is it. And it's done by Gale Force 9. Everybody who's listened to this show knows what a big fan I am of Gale Force 9 games. They made my beloved Firefly. They also made Star Trek Ascendancy. And they did a really good job. In fact, it's the same designers that made Firefly made Star Trek Ascendancy. Aaron Dill, John Kovaleski, and Sean Swigart. In the base game, you are picking a faction. There's the Federation, the Klingons, and the Romulans, the 3 main factions from the original series. And you're starting at your base planet. So for the Federation, that's Earth. For the Klingons, that's Kronos. For the Romulans, that's Romulus. And you're exploring out into the galaxy. It is a perfect natural progression. You're eventually going to run into each other. It's asymmetric player powers. Now, what makes this a 3-player only game is that there are only 3 factions.
Yeah.
Until you buy the expansions. So the first 2 expansions that came out were the Ferengi and the Cardassians. Mm-hmm. And they've also come out with a Borg expansion, which the Borgs are NPCs. So nobody's playing the Borgs. The Borgs are automated, which makes this suddenly a 2-player acceptable game. Mm-hmm. It's an interesting game, but this game plays awesome 3-player. We played it. We sat down and played it. 3-player with our friend Frank. Hi, Frank. And we had a great time. I mean, the player powers are perfect. It's perfectly balanced. But in order to play this game, you need a minimum of 3 players.
Yeah.
Unless you're playing with the Borg, which the Borg is the 3rd player. So I thought that was kind of an interesting take on it. You can play it with more than 3 players once you get the expansions. You can play it 2-player if you have the Borg expansion, which kind of like the 7 Wonders 2-player variant or the Power Grid 2-player variant. It has an NPC that you both kind of control and take turns with, but it's kind of automated as well. Mm-hmm. But I really liked the way this IP was handled. I like the way the gameplay goes. And I would happily sit down and play this with 2 other Star Trek fans, 3-player. We don't need to include all of the races that are included. Mm-hmm. It's just a really fun game. I did have somebody ask me a question. Roger, who's been a contributor on this show before, did ask me about the random elements of this game. And I wanted to answer his question on the show here. You're drawing cards that have planets on them. So, for example, you could draw Vulcan or Andoria or the Tholian homeworld or some of the other worlds that you've seen in Star Trek episodes. And it doesn't matter if it's the original series or the Next Generation or Voyager or whatever. You're drawing these different cards, and those are the worlds that you're encountering, and they each have different circumstances that It could be an advanced civilization. It could be a hazardous area, that kind of thing. Future Cathy here. I misspoke. You aren't drawing cards with planets on them. You're actually drawing these round cardboard tiles. Everything else I said was correct. Okay, now back to past, Cathy. So he was interested in, does the randomness of these cards set you up for failure? And I have to say, absolutely not. I think that it's an exploration game. I wouldn't necessarily... You might call it a 4X game, but I would say if you understand Star Trek, it's not going to be a hard 4X game. You're drawing cards the same way you're drawing cards in Firefly, and it does provide the randomness. There's also some dice rolling, which also adds to the randomness. But I think this game is really well balanced. I think it's a lot of fun. If you enjoy the Star Trek IP, you're really going to enjoy this game. If you're not a huge fan of Star Trek, I think you're still going to enjoy this game if you like 4X games. Anyway, that is Star Trek Ascendancy. I can't say enough good things about it. As a 3-player game, it plays great. It plays great.
Yeah. I think that was what my question was. If you're not a Star Trek fan, or if you haven't followed the series, would it be a game that you would enjoy or be able to not just enjoy, but kind of participate in? And
if you understand that the majority of the Star Trek series are about exploring space and meeting new civilizations, some of them are nice and some of them are not nice, then I think that's all you really need to understand about Star Trek in order to enjoy this game. If you enjoy 4X games, you're going to enjoy this. And if you enjoy long games, that involve space, you're going to enjoy this. This game, when we played it 5-player at one point, and it took us about 4.5 or 5 hours to play, but it was really engaging the whole time. It's not one of those games where you're going, oh, is it my turn yet? That's one of the complaints about Firefly, is that there's a lot of downtime between turns. I didn't feel the downtime between turns in Star Trek Ascendancy like I do in Firefly.
The turns are pretty quick between players?
Yeah.
Okay. That's why.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mark and I did play this 2-player once we got the Borg expansion, and it was all right. I'm really looking forward to playing the Borg expansion with 3 players or 4 players or 5 players and seeing how that does. Because the Borg just kind of throw things into chaos, which they do on the show anyway. If you're not familiar with the Borg, they are the ultimate scary monster of the week. They are people that they're cyborgs, basically. They've had computer enhancements. They're all joined into a singular hive mind, and they move together and are very hard to stop. They are pretty much the ultimate monster of the week. They are tough to handle in this game too. So 3-player game though, like I said, if you're just playing the base game and you're playing the Federation, the Klingons and Romulans, and you know about the Federation, the Klingons and the Romulans, you're going to sit there and go, yeah, these player powers are absolutely balanced. The Klingons can't retreat from a battle regardless of who they're up against. They could be up against the Federation. They could be up against the Borg. They can't retreat. The Romulans, they're suspicious, which the Romulans in the television series are very suspicious. So when you make a trade agreement with them, your side of the trade agreement goes into immediate effect. They have to wait for the next turn to come into effect because they don't quite trust you yet. And then the Federation, they can't go into pre-warp cultures, which that's a rule for the Federation. They can't go in and say, hey, guess what? We're here to help with pre-warp cultures. So very well-balanced game. Excellent 3-player game. It's not one of those games where you're like, doggone it, this only plays 3 players, which I have run into with some games where I bought the game and gone, Mark, let's play this. Oh, shoot. It only plays at 3 players. Doggone it. Shasta, Sadie, anybody interested in playing? For those that don't know, Shasta and Sadie are my dogs.
Yeah, that's how I feel too, since we play a lot of 2-player games. But yeah, so you give that a 4.5 then?
Yes. And that's just because I haven't played it as much as I would like to because it's a 3-player game. So I need to play it some more. I've only played it 3 or 4 times. Oh. So I definitely need to get it to some more library game days and get it played some more. There's a lot to explore in this game. There's a lot to try out. I just think it's a a fun game. Now, let me ask you a question before we continue on, Annette. When I proposed this as a topic for discussion, what made you sign up and say, yeah, I'll talk about that?
Because one reason is that I have a lot of games that are between 2 and 4 players, and I've played them with 3 players, and I enjoy them even more than with 2 players. Or I've played them with more players, and I think it's just too much information. There's too much going on that I just prefer to play it with less, with 3. So I wanted to jump on because I don't necessarily talk about those type of games. And so that's why I wanted to participate in this.
Now, do you ever pick up a game and think, oh, yeah, this looks like great fun, and then go, oh, it's 3 players?
All the time, yeah.
I actually have a game sitting on my unplayed shelf right now called Fire of London.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to pull that one out and play it, and then I went, oh, it's 3 players.
Yeah, I have Antique 2. And Antique, that requires 3 players. And that's been on my shelf for a while.
So it's kind of a challenge to get these games to the table, especially for people like you and I who don't have kids that we can say, hey, sit down, we're going to play this game now.
Right. And then the niche that we kind of fall under too, it kind of, you have to play it with a certain person that'll play those type of games with you too. And sometimes that's a little harder to find.
But I am finding that when they do require that these games have a minimum of 3 players, that they do play really well at 3 players.
Yeah.
Have you ever found a game that says, 2 to 4 players or 2 to 5 players or 2 to 6 players, and you play the 2-player, and there's, 4 special rules for playing 2-player.
Yeah, that's 7 Wonders.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, if you had to come up with all these special rules, why include a 2-player variant?
Yeah, I don't know why gamer or designers do that. I don't know if it's just to attract someone to buy the game because it offers that player count. It's probably because of that, but it should just be set 3.
Yeah. Now earlier I talked about Between Two Cities. I played that at Conquest Sac, and that is a minimum 3-player game as well.
Yeah.
I've only played it twice, so that's why it's not necessarily on this particular list. But because it comes from Stonemaier Games, there's also a 1-player variant and a 2-player variant, which I have not yet tried. So what do you think about it when it's designed to be a 3-player game, but then they include a 2-player variant or a 1-player variant? Do you think that those variants are okay, or
usually not? Yeah, usually not.
My main experience with 2-player variants has been Power Grid and 7 Wonders. And yeah, if you've really, really, really got to scratch that itch, they're okay.
Yeah.
But they don't play nearly as well as the regular 3+ player variant does.
Yeah. For example, 7 Wonders hit, going back to that one. I had never bought 7 Wonders, and I played it at other friends' houses, and then I thought this game would never work for Mitch and I because it doesn't really offer a really good 2-player game. And as soon as 7 Wonders Duel came out, and that was all the rage, that's why I picked that one up, because I was like, it's just suited for 2. That's all we need. We don't need this big box game where we can play 7 players, because at that time we never had 7 players available. So it just fits us and our need. And so it's kind of deceiving in a way to offer it as a 2-player game when it doesn't suit it. But
right.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
Now, you have one on here that every time I've seen it, I've looked at it and said, Troyes.
Yeah. It's
How do you actually pronounce it?
I say toi.
Toi?
Toi.
It's a French word.
Yeah, it's a French word, and I don't know French, so I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right.
Okay.
But it's a game by Sébastien Dujardin. I don't know if I said that right. I'm sorry. And
Dujardin.
Yeah, and Xavier Georges, who actually made Gingopolis, and Elaine Orban. And so the 3 of them created this game named Toi. And it's a 2010 game, so it's been around for a while. And originally it was a Perl game, but now it's Z-Man, or vice versa. It was printed a while ago, and then just last year it got the reprint. So
nice.
It was out of print for the longest time. I actually picked it up before the reprint, so it cost me quite a bit, but I got it, and I actually love the artwork on the cover. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I enjoy it because it's so different. It's kind of has this medieval take on the world that it's in, and it doesn't look like all other board games where they're really showcasing the color works. It's kind of like the browns and the yellows. It's kind of like dry, but I love it. Like, I really like the artwork because it's so different. Talking about the game itself, I think if I explain the game a little bit, it'll kind of show you why, more or less, it kind of fits that 3-player, plays best with 3 players. It's a dice drafting game, and it's set in the 13th century, like medieval France era. And so what you're trying to do is kind of build up your city, and you're trying to gain influences. And you can gain influences in military, in religion, and civil. That's only 3 locations you can really specialize in. And what you do on the board is you have this map of the city, and you can go into any one of these 3 regions. If you put your meeple in the military section, well, you get a red die because that die is going to represent military. If you go into the religious section, then you're going to get a white die. And if you put a meeple in the city hall or civil section, you'll get a yellow die. So you have these 3 locations that you can place your meeples in. And then when you play the game itself, what you do is you have an income. Everyone gets 10 coins minus where their people are located. So on the board. If they have a lot of people out, well, they get taxed. So you get even less money. And then after that, you roll your dice. So depending on how many characters you have out, meeples you have out, you get a certain amount of dice to play. And then after that, an event happens. So something happens where you go into war, or there's an outbreak, a plague or something, and you roll these black dice. And if you're first player, you have to defeat the event. And then it goes along. So what you're doing is you're trying to defeat them with your red dice. And then you also, after that,
which are your military dice.
Right. And so after you defeat the event, then you go into your action phase. And your action phase can be either like placing more meeples on the board. And when you place more meeples, well, who's ever there gets bumped out. So you're constantly bumping other people out of the way. They'll get less dice and you'll get more. So that's kind of cool. But the other cool thing is that you can also buy other people's dice. So if they bump you out and if you have more money, you can take their dice from under them. So that's another interesting part of the game. And also you can construct a cathedral. You can do agriculture. You could pass eventually. And you play a certain amount of rounds. Now, I've played it with 2 players, and this game is pretty fun. It works really well. But the thing that I found that it lacks is the interaction. Because you play with automation set of meeples. They're gray meeples, and they kind of randomly are placed on the board. They, have their own location, their own dice, and you can use those dice, but it's like playing with a fake third player. So it kind of works, but, it's really not meant for 2. And you could play with 4 players. However, I found with 4 players, the rotation is kind of off. There's a lot more going on the board that it becomes too much, and you can push people out easily. And so that's just it's just not enjoyable with 4 players.
It's another one of those games that plays perfectly at 3 players.
With 3 players, I found that this game plays really well because it has the right amount of pushing around on the board. It has the right amount of stealing from other players. You kind of have to defeat the events together, so you don't feel like, one person is just defeating them all and taking all your red dice from you if you can't fight. So it's a really interesting game that plays all 2 to 4 player counts okay, but 3 players where the sweet spot.
That's the sweet spot. Mm-hmm. No, nice.
Yeah,
nice.
But that one I say is a 5. If you like Euro strategy games, and it's a dice drafting game, which is a little different for Euro gamers because dice usually don't combine well with Euro gamers. But
which is funny because earlier we talked about Bora Bora and a little bit about Castles of Burgundy, but those are both considered Euros, but they're dice drafting.
Right.
Or no, they're kind of dice worker placement kind of games.
Yeah, sort of. I think Bora Bora is more like a dice drafting too. Right. You roll 3 dice and then you place them based on their pips. Right. And it's the order of placement that you choose. So yeah, I don't know. That's not dice drafting, but yeah, it's weird how these games like offer those dice, but they use it in a special, interesting way instead of just a random way.
That still makes it a Euro.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I have 2 games on my list that are from a specific genre that generally requires that you have a minimum of 3 players to play. And that genre is social deduction games. And the 2 that I have on here representing social deduction games are Bang the Dice Game, which is a light filler game, but it's still kind of social deduction because you've got a character with asymmetric player powers. Each character has their own set of goals and objectives that they're trying to achieve in this gunfight that you're playing with dice. The other game that I have on here that is a social deduction game, and I could probably add a couple more to this, is Battlestar Galactica. Again, you have asymmetric player powers. You're each playing a character. One of you is probably a traitor of some sort. Not necessarily. Mark and Frank and I played a 3-player game of Battlestar Galactica one time, and Mark was playing an admiral. I was playing the president. I don't remember who Frank was playing. Sorry, Frank. I mean, we were like almost at the end of the game. We were going to make our last jump to Earth. We were going to win. And Mark was sitting there going, I don't think we have a traitor in this game. I really don't think we have a traitor in this game. And all of a sudden, I revealed as the Cylon, and they were dead in space with no fuel. And it's like, yay, dead humans, I win! And, you know, I've only played Battlestar Galactica a couple times 3-player, but you have to have at least 3 players or the whole hidden traitor mechanic doesn't work.
Yeah.
The same is true for Bang the Dice Game. There's not a hidden traitor mechanic necessarily, but you don't know necessarily who are the outlaws, who's the deputy, and you're all going after one another, you know, in this Wild West shootout. I do have one interesting story where one of the sides of the dice, these are all 6-sided dice. They have different icons on them that do different things. Well, one of the icons on one of the sides of dice was a green arrow, and the green arrows represent you're getting attacked by Native Americans. We all got killed. There were 3 of us playing. We all got killed by Indians.
Oh, no.
Mark got killed by Indians first, and then it was down to the 2 players that were left, me and this other gal that we were playing. And over the course of our next couple of rolls, we both got knocked out by the Indians.
Oh, no.
So it was kind of funny that, you know, we're playing this 3-player game and none of us killed each other. We were killed by the game. You know, when I first bought Bang the Dice Game, I brought it home. I went, Mark, I brought Bang the Dice Game. Let's sit down and play it. And we're sitting there reading the rules, and we go 1 player, 2 player, 3 player. Oh, this is a 3-player game.
Oh, no.
Doggone it. Oh, no. So then we had to take it to a game night in order to cookbook it and learn how to play it, which we were kind of hoping to avoid doing. Because that's not always the most fun situation where you're sitting there going, okay, you do this and you do that and I do this. And does everybody understand now?
Right.
But Bang is an easy game to cookbook. It's an easy game to learn, but you do need the 3 players because one of you is the sheriff, one of you is an outlaw, maybe one of you is the deputy. You could be a different type of outlaw though too. So
Yeah.
I do think it's important for social deduction games that they have 3 players because, you know, there could be a traitor. Mm-hmm. There could not be a traitor, but that particular mechanic lends to some distrust.
Right.
And if you know that you're not the traitor and you know that the person across the table from you isn't the traitor, then that kind of makes the whole atmosphere of the game evaporate. That's true for Battlestar Galactica. That's true for Dead of Winter.
Yeah.
We don't always play with a traitor in Dead of Winter, but you don't know who has a goal that says you need to hoard food And so when you're trying to, meet a general goal to have enough cans of food, are they adding to the food or are they putting in a tool? They say they're putting in food, but are they really putting in a tool or a book or, something like that? Because they've got this side goal going on. Mm-hmm. So, you need that third player to add that layer of obfuscation that you're not going to get with 2-player games.
Yeah, that's how I feel like social deduction games. Like they're more or less like party games. Like you need the players for that. And that's why it doesn't necessarily work well too. But I think I played Shadowhunters recently, and that's also another social deduction type game, and that needed at least 3 for that type of game.
Yeah, Werewolf is that way. One Night Ultimate Werewolf is that way. Chris from Dice Hate Me Games recommended Isfahan. Have you played Isfahan?
No, I don't think I've ever heard of that one.
Let me look up here how he described it. He says it's a classic 1-hour wonder, providing a truly fulfilling Euro experience in a short amount of time. It has what remains to be one of the best dice drafting systems in any game. It has a deep variety of ways to earn points. It's colorful, it's elegant, and it has camels. I don't know that I'm going to be sold on the fact that it has camels, but that's not going to dissuade me either. Jessica Wade, who was a host on the show for a little while, she also talked about how much she liked this game. Huh. I have not seen it. I have not played it. I asked him, is it still in print? And he said, yes, it's apparently still available on Amazon. So
what's the name of it?
Isfahan. And it is spelled Ysphan.
Oh.
Isfahan.
It doesn't sound like anything it's spelled.
Pretty much. Yeah. Yeah. I would have looked at that game and went, what's an Isfahan?
Yeah.
I'm still kind of wondering what's an Isfahan, but it has camels.
Okay.
I haven't yet played Camel Up either. And I don't know if that's a 3-player game, but yeah. So camels are not necessarily a selling point for me, but they're not a detractor either. So that's another game that I'm going to be looking for. Have you ever played any of the One Night Ultimate games?
I have.
Werewolf, Vampire, Alien?
No. I haven't played any of those. I played the One Night Ultimate Werewolf, and that was as far as I went with the whole series. I'm not a big social deduction fan. So that's why I really don't like those type of games. So I really don't seek them out.
I'm not a huge party game fan. Mm-hmm. And party games are another one that you have to have at least 3 players in order for them to work. Yeah. Something like Cards Against Humanity or Apples to Apples or Joking Hazard. Mm-hmm. Those aren't going to work if you've only got 2 players because you know who's contributing what. Yeah. But with 3 players, it adds that layer of, I know what I contributed, but I don't know which of the other 2 contributed something. Yeah. Those require a minimum of 3 players. Like I said, I'm not a huge party game fan, but I do enjoy them for a while. Mm-hmm. When there's 3 or more players, actually, those party games are better with more than 3 players. Mm-hmm. But you need at least 3 in order to make them work. Do you think it's just something about the mechanism in general for social deduction, party games?
Yeah, I think it's the fact that you always have to have an unknown factor in those games. There is an unknown factor, and one of them is something that can end the game or kind of shut the game off. Or it's like you don't want to shut the game off. You want to continue the game. And if you get caught and, either your game is over or someone else's game is over. And I think that's the...
Or in some cases, your gameplay just changed.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, that's another game.
Because, for example, in Battlestar Galactica, if you get revealed as a Cylon or you reveal yourself as a Cylon, then your method of gameplay just changed. Right. All of a sudden, you can't contribute more than 1 card to trying to do something, and it opens the door to a whole bunch of stuff you can do that other players can't.
Yeah, it's true, too. I think that's why those type of games kind of need that extra player.
Now, have you ever played a game where you're like, why does this require 3 players? I haven't come across that yet.
No, I don't think so. I think I've come across like 2-player only games where I think, oh, if I just have another one of those games, I can play it. Like, for example, Eggs of Ostrich. I'm like, oh, if I had another deck of that card, I could play up to 6 players, right? But I think there's probably a reason for it not to have that player count.
You had another one to talk about here.
Yeah, I had El Vecchio. El Vecchio is another strategy-based game, but it's a pick-up and delivery game.
And interesting.
Yeah, it's a game that it's by Rudiger Dorn. It's a 2 to 4 player game. And it's by Tasty Minstrel. It just came out as a Tasty Minstrel game. In that game, it's another game set upon Europe. It's in Florence this time. And it's in the 15th century versus the 13th century, which is a big difference because during that time you have the Medici family, and they took control of a lot of Florence and its provinces around it.
And they stayed in control for a long time.
Right. And so what us as players are, we represent a family that's rich that kind of wants to boot out the Medici family and put our own family members in the city hall to gain a little bit more influence around town. And so to do so, what we need to do is kind of inject our family members at different regions on a map. And we also, with those family members, we can place them and we can gain influence in certain provinces outside of City Hall. And these provinces, if we get the right amount of goods, we can kind of persuade ourselves to be in that location, and then we can go ahead and attain these special province tiles, which will give you benefits throughout the game. The only thing with this game is that it doesn't have 4 provinces around the board. It has 3 provinces. And I think that's why this game kind of works best as a 3-player game alongside with Trois, because of those 3 factors. So you have like 3 provinces, you have 3 places of influences that you can kind of persuade or influence or control.
So something in the playtesting told them, okay, we're going to leave these other provinces of Italy out.
Right.
And it's just going to be these 3 provinces in this area, and that works best.
Yeah, and I think like with both El Vecchio, I'll just kind of blend the two, El Vecchio and Trois. And the reason why they work so well with 3 is because at 2 players, both of them, there's not that much interaction between players. In Trois, you have that automation player for 3. And El Vecchio, you don't have that automated player, but you are traveling around the map. And because of that, you don't really kind of bump into each other. You can kind of like stay at one region. They could stay in another and kind of keep it that way.
You know, you could say much the same thing about Star Trek Ascendancy.
Mm-hmm.
If you've only got the 2 players, you're not going to bump into each other. And that means you're not going to have any interesting interactions. Right. You're going to be doing your own thing. But if all of a sudden you both have to fight the Borg, or you both have to fight the Romulans or the Ferengi or whatever, that adds some significant interest to it.
El Vecchio has another interesting factor where you have these middlemen that you move around the board. And if your family member is on the same space as a middleman, then you get to do the action on that space.
Oh, nice.
And after you do that action, you move that person, you move that middleman down the line, down the road. And so you could kind of see where they would move towards. You could kind of place yourself in front of someone else or along the road so that middleman can kind of like move there, and then you can have the next turn and take that action. With 2 players, you can kind of predict it so well that you have both players kind of predicting those movements and moving, and it kind of plays itself in a way, the game. With 3 players, there's a little bit more randomness because you don't know when a player is going to play that player. You don't know how long you have to wait until that piece or that middleman gets moved. And I think that's what I like about El Vecchio, playing with 3 players. 3 players, you kind of guess when it's coming along, so you can do that action. And then with 4 players, it's even more random because things are just moving around too much. You can't really predict. It's too loose.
So let me ask you one final question here. What do you prefer in a game? Do you prefer that it's a 3-player only game, meaning you have to have 3 players, you can't have 4 players, you can't have 2 players, you have to have 3 players, and that's it? Or Would you prefer a game that has a minimum of 3 players but can go higher from there? All other things being equal.
It depends. I think if I have a game with me that plays 3 or more players and I don't play those too often, then I'm definitely going to go for that. If I think someone else is going to join me in and I have 3 players and I think someone else might, be persuaded to play, then I'll play like a 2 to 4. Best with 3, but if someone joins us, it won't be so bad.
But what about like Eggs of Ostrich that is 3 players only?
No, that one, it's a 3 player only. That one's like when I'm waiting for 4th player.
Okay.
Or there's only 3 of us. The 4th player is left and there's only 3 of us.
So you prefer a game that could go higher, but it's okay with 3 players anyway. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I think I would go that way as well. Mm-hmm. A 3 player only game is interesting. That doesn't necessarily preclude me from adding it to my collection, but I like games that have the little bit of flexibility where you can sit down and play it with 3 players and it plays perfectly well, but you could also play with 4 or 5 or 6.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just there's a little more flexibility there, I think.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else?
No, that's pretty much it.
Okay. Well, we want to hear what you think about 3-player only games or games that require a minimum of 3 players, but maybe could go higher. What are your favorite games to play? I know some honorable mentions are the One Night Ultimate games like Ultimate Werewolf, One Night Ultimate Vampire, One Night Ultimate Alien. I mentioned Dead of Winter.
Yeah.
Are there any other honorable mentions that you want to bring up, Annette?
Le Havre. Le Havre is a pretty good one.
Okay.
3 players. Okay. Yeah. And,
all right.
I don't know any other ones. Antique. I mentioned Antique. I haven't played it yet, but I'm sure it's good.
Fire of London. That's one I haven't played yet, but it's a minimum 3-player game.
Power Grid.
All right. Power Grid. Yes. 7 Wonders.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for joining me for this. This has been a fun discussion.
Yeah. Thank you.
So now we're getting to the part of the episode where we're winding things down and looking ahead. Annette, what have you got on your schedule for the next week or 2?
Well, I have my anniversary with Mitch, so...
Oh, yeah? How many years?
14.
14? Wow.
I know, right? That's a long time.
It is.
No, we're celebrating ours on April 3rd. So...
Oh, that's my birthday.
Oh, good. Oh, there you go. It was a good year. It was a good day.
Yeah.
So we're going to plan on just hanging out. And, like at 14 years, it's like, what else can we do, on our anniversary? We've done so many anniversaries by now. Well, I think we're going to probably play some games, watch a movie. We're going to go to the movies. And then we're going to tour around the city. So we're going to do some sketch walking. And kind of like just hang out and enjoy each other.
Nice. And you guys live in San Francisco, right?
Right. So.
Which is a great walking city.
And and it's a really beautiful weekend because today was really nice. So we're going to have a great time. It's usually not sunny in San Francisco. So we're going to take advantage of the sun.
Nice. Absolutely. San Francisco's weather just boggles my mind sometimes. The coldest day I ever spent in San Francisco was in July one time, and I was freezing the whole day. But that's just San Francisco's peculiar weather. Well, happy anniversary to you and Mitch.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I'll let him know too.
Okay, great. I have a Dungeons and Dragons game coming up with my friend Doc Cross. Hi, Doc. He is just an outstanding GM. He just absolutely keeps us engaged the entire time. We meet at a round table pizza, and we don't get the little party room or anything like that. We are sitting in the middle of the restaurant playing Dungeons and Dragons. And it is so funny because people come up to us and go, "What are you doing?" We're playing Dungeons and Dragons. And then we go back to it. And they're like, "Oh, you mean like that game from the 70s?" And we're like, "Yeah, that's it."
Like Stranger Things.
Some people have pointed out Stranger Things. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Last time we played, we had an encounter with a blue dragon. He has since imprinted himself on us. And now we're basically his, we can go off and do our own thing, but he's given us some tasks to do. And so we have some time to do them, but we need to be mindful of, getting those things done because we don't want this dragon getting mad at us.
Oh.
And apparently Doc's trying to recruit some other players for the game. So at some point we should be integrating some new players in. We're playing fifth edition. To me, D&D is D&D. Whether I'm playing a D&D or 5th edition or 3.5 or whatever, just tell me what dice I need to roll in order to fire my bow. I am not into, well, if I, have this stat and this stat and this stat, then I am super ranger or whatever. I'm just like, yay, I got some experience points. That means I can add to this and this and this, but... Okay, now what do I need to roll to fire my bow again? But I have so much fun with it. It's just, we're having a blast with it and really, really enjoying the experience. Mark has told me that he is really liking 5th edition. I've enjoyed every version of D&D I've ever played. So I don't get that much into the rules.
Yeah.
Probably the only RPG rule book I've ever read from cover to cover has been Firefly, and that's because I'm DMing it. I have to know the rule system. But when you're a player, you can pretty much count on the DM to tell you what the rules are and what you need to do. And so it's a laid back environment. There's pizza, so that just puts me in my happy spot right there. And then I'm playing games and yeah, it's a lot of fun. So other than that, we have a really uneventful weekend. Shh, don't tell anybody. It's unusual for me to have a weekend where I don't have a lot of stuff going on. So yeah, I'm going to enjoy that.
Good. Yeah, take advantage of it.
And then the following weekend is my next Walker Lynn weekend, which is my little niece, my 3-year-old niece that I'm introducing to board games. I have Animal Upon Animal to introduce her to, and I'm sure we'll play some more First Orchard. For those that don't know, I'm a rideshare driver now. The other day I was giving this lady a ride to the airport, and she told me she was going down to LA to take care of her 1 or 2 year old grandson. She liked playing games with him. And I'm like, oh, have you heard of? And I started naming off all these Haba games. She'd never heard of any of them. And she was, sitting there on Amazon going, okay, yeah, I'll have this sent down there and I'll have this sent down there. And,
oh, nice.
And because it's LA, it can be delivered tomorrow or later today or whatever. And yeah, so that was a fun conversation to have, with this total stranger, but I was spreading the board game love,
The board game word.
Yeah, let's get them in early. Come on, introduce the kids and let's get them hooked. So, yeah. All right. Well, thank you for joining me on this. How can people get a hold of you if they want to connect with you online?
Well, I'm known as Netters Plays, and you could follow me on Instagram. I'm on YouTube. I'm also on Twitter and Facebook. And then also on Mondays, I'm a part of Board Game Breakfast on the Dice Tower. So I have a segment on there called Applied Mechanics, where I go ahead and talk about game mechanisms and my favorite part of in certain game. And I'm also there with my bird, Board Game Gizmo.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's where you can follow me all over the internet as Netters Plays.
All right, and we will have links to all of those in the show notes, of course. And then I run the Our Turn Podcast Twitter account, and Sarah runs the Our Turn Podcast Facebook page, which is facebook.com/OurTurnPodcast. And we also have a guild on Board Game Geek, which is guild number 2600. We have some great discussions going on there. I have been a little lax lately with keeping that updated, but I am bound and determined to get back to posting things there because I just love the interaction I get there. I love the interaction I get from Twitter. I love the interaction I get from Board Game Geek. It is just so much fun.
Yeah.
And I really, really enjoy it. So, all right. Well, thank you for joining me, Annette. This has been a ton of fun. I always have a great time talking with you.
Yeah, me too.
All right. So on behalf of the entire Our Turn podcast crew, thanks for listening. That was our turn.
Now it's yours.
Thank you for listening. This episode was recorded on March 29th, 2018 and is written and produced by Cathy Ford and Annette Villa with assistance from Mark Ford. We want and encourage your questions, comments, and feedback. Please call 916-426-2873 and leave us a short voicemail or send an email to feedback@ourturnpodcast.com. Our theme music was composed by Adriana Crickle. Incidental music was provided by Ben Sound. Please check out our show notes to learn more about these talented artists. The material in this episode is copyrighted under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. If you want to learn more about the games discussed in this episode, please visit our website at ourturnpodcast.com/episode 73. You can find a list of the games along with links to their listing on BoardGameGeek.com. We are proud members of the Dice Tower Network. You can find out about other shows in the network like the Dukes of Dice, Board Games Insider, or Four Corners of the Board by going to dicetowernetwork.com. Thank you for your support. If you like what you heard, please tell your friends about us.